I'm Kevin Coleman at DuBois_22.
I'm Jeff Bell at For Whom J Bell Tolls.
And I am Christian Williams at C Williams NFL, and this is the Devy Royale's YouTube.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the YouTube channel here at the Devy Royale. On this episode on the channel, we're going to be talking about Treylon Burks. We just talked about Garrett Wilson. If you missed that, please go check it out. And another wide receiver that's, I think, highly debated, right? I think he started off last October as everybody's wide receiver one because of the numbers. He's monster. January came around. Everybody's like, let's make sure he tests well. And then he kind of had an okay combine. We talked about what he did there. And I think he's kind of gone down. I think he's a very debated person here, debated wide receiver. What do we think of Treylon? So we're going to go through what we think of Treylon. Where do we think you should draft him at? Maybe what his draft capital could be. Christian, what do you think of Treylon Burks just in terms of what he did, maybe his little backstory on him, what he did at Arkansas, those type of things?
Sure. So he's an interesting case study because, you always want your analytics and your film community to be kind of married, right? And for 95% of this process, that was exactly the case. Treylon Burks was an analytical darling. He gets a nice big market share of things at Arkansas, but when you look at what Arkansas is, you can understand why that would be the case. And on film, he does a lot of good things as well. But the problem is, and this actually, like on the screen here, this relative athletic score was pre-update and it is now 5.83. So now we're looking at a guy who, we do need to mention that he hunts like pigs and hogs or something like that with a knife, because that is important to his profile. But he does a lot of things well, but he is not as athletic as we thought. He has some nice size adjusted speed, but he's a raw route runner. He's a big guy. He's got a pretty good catch radius. He's got some big hands, but not as big as maybe we once thought. But he was heavily targeted. He projects probably as a big slot in his first year if he's to be successful. His release is okay, and it kind of needs cleaned up. But as you can see, he was ultra productive in his last 2 years at Arkansas, posting almost 2,000 yards over those 2 years and averaging over 16 yards per reception. So very, very interesting case. Jeff, what do you think of Treylon?
So he's not DK Metcalf, and I hear that he's DK Metcalf. He's not the level of athlete of DK Metcalf. I think that there was this belief prior to the combine that Treylon Burks was the 6'5", 235-pound wide receiver that ran a 4.2, and I think that that kind of didn't age very well. And I think that there was a lot of shock factor when people realized the reality of the player that he is, and I think some people were mentioning that prior to that happening, but that is what that is. That's bygones are bygones. I don't know. I think that he's not N'Keal Harry either, though, and I think that that's kind of thrown out there a lot. I think that there were a lot that happened with Harry for him to fail the way that he was. I don't know that he was mentally. He wasn't. I don't know. He was ready for the pressure cooker with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and all that happened in New England. My concern in Treylon Burks, and it's been concern that's been voiced by many, and I think it's very fair. A lot of the usage that he saw in Arkansas was either vertical on a 9 route or that where he would allowed to use his physicality. He's able to get up to speed, but it takes him a minute to get up to speed. He was able to use that down the field against smaller defensive backs who, the reality of it is most of college football, these guys are going to be selling insurance, and maybe now that they're going to be working in the NIL department, whatever it is now. But he's not exactly going against NFL corners and NFL safeties vertically when he was using those routes, or there were a lot of schemed up touches. Getting him free releases, getting him the ball in his hands when he's moving forward, those type of plays that again, he was able to use his physicality. I do think it's fair, and something that I don't see mentioned. KJ Jefferson is probably a very nice man, but he's not a very accurate quarterback. And so I think that there were certainly some limitations in the offensive scheme that Arkansas was running because of KJ Jefferson. And I think that that's something that's not mentioned very often when it comes to Treylon Burks. A lot of their offense was elements of option offenses. A lot of, it was a very run heavy offense. A lot of Treylon Burks' usage was extensions of the run game or getting downfield and using him in those regards. But no, he is not DK Metcalf. And so stop saying that. But that brings up a level of concern, though, because if he's not the athlete that DK Metcalf is, we see DK Metcalf get shut down in the NFL level because he's not able to do multiple variations of routes because he's so limited in his usage. And so that is where the real possibility exists on Treylon Burks, that if he's in a situation where he's got to get scheme touches or just vertical deep shots, you're going to be looking at a very boomer bust wide receiver, and you're not going to be looking at the volume target hog that you're expecting to see.
And I agree. I mean, when you guys are talking about, Jeff's really dived into Treylon a lot, because I do think, when he talks about it on my listen, and I think he is right there. I do think he has a limited route tree too. Like I think just in that offense he does. Like I don't think it necessarily was his fault. So this isn't really a knock on him. It's a knock within the system, like we talked about. And he has that ability to do this. Like he's a yak guy. Like he's not gonna always be that fast guy off the initial burst, but when he gets going and he gets downhill, that's when you see kind of him excel. But he does have that ability. I do think he's a vertical threat. Now, where's he play at? Like that, I think is the question. Like, can he play on the outside exclusively, or is he going to have to play in a slot? Like, where is he going to be as a receiver there? When he does this, that's good. Like when we're watching this on the tape, like those are the good things. And everybody has seen this catch. I mean, it's a beautiful catch in the corner of the end zone. So I do think that. Now, I do think he had some drops too, though. He had some concentration drops throughout his college career. Like he did. And these are things that you're going to have to look into. I don't know if the NFL is going to like him as much as like we all do, like, or some fantasy, people think. I think that he's going to slip a little bit. I mean, would it shock you to see him go out of the first round, like to slip out of the first round at all? Like he could, right? I've seen him mock to Tennessee at the back end of the first, which would be an awful landing spot for him, in my opinion. But if he went in that second round, like that wouldn't shock me.
No, not at all. I mean, I started that movement a long time ago, not to pat myself on the back, but even when we thought he was that crazy athlete, it's just a guy that the NFL has kind of moved away from. We'll talk about Drake London soon. We just talked about Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is the type of receiver that the NFL wants, and Chris Olave, and even Sky Moore, my favorite, who we have to talk about before the draft. So that has to be on the next list of players that we're going to talk about. But it's those types of receivers that get open early because they are helpful to younger quarterbacks. And I think what we're seeing right now is a wave of younger quarterbacks. And so most of these teams are going to want a guy like Garrett Wilson over a guy like Treylon Burks. You talked about his hands and his concentration drops. That was one of my notes watching him, was that he body catches a lot. For a guy who has these long arms and these big hands, he lets it get on him. And when he lets it get on him, he oftentimes can't even wrangle it in then. So, it's a lot of concerns with Treylon, but overall the film is good. Like you see the yak, you see him win against press sometimes. The sample size wasn't tremendous because he does have that downfield ability, but he can win against press. It's just he's going to take some time to develop, and I think you're going to need to practice some patience with this kid, even for your fantasy team. I look at we'll talk about like where we're comfortable drafting him, but his athleticism bumped him down to wide receiver 4 for me. And so if I'm looking at the wide receiver 4, I'm kind of looking at the back end of the first as like the starting point. And even then, draft capital might change that. If he falls out of the first in the NFL draft, what does that do for his value? I think what it's going to do is actually put it to where it needs to be, which is back end of the first, early second. And then I'm comfortable kind of projecting him forward from that spot. But I don't know, Jeff, where are you comfortable taking Treylon?
Well, I think that the reality of it is you're going to have somebody in your league that's probably in love with Treylon Burks, and I think that that's just kind of what we've seen. you mentioned the league is trending away from. It's kind of odd because the league is trending away from him, but of course the elephant in the room is the whole Deebo Samuel thing, and he has elements of that in his skill set. And if somebody is able to harness that, but I do think there are major questions on if that turns into a replicable volume fantasy role, because we know the value of targets. And so if it turns into he's getting handoffs that are end arounds, that already, if you're in a PPR league or a half PPR league, those are less valuable carries than if he's getting a schemed up in the passing game. And so, but you are right, and you're exactly right on the way that the league is going towards these quicker guys. And the reality of it is, it's kind of, they're easier to replace. It is probably a lot of it because players get hurt in the NFL, and contract situations happen in the NFL, and you need to be able to be replicable in your offense. And I don't know. The concern is I don't know that Treylon is a special enough talent to go away from that replication. And I think that I don't know. I played fantasy for a long time, and so I go back and Andre Johnson is one of my favorite players, or Des Bryant, these big wide receivers that used to be the foundation of NFL offenses, because the reality of it is quarterbacks used to hold the ball longer, and there was buckets in, then the cover 2 came in, and there were buckets that you were able to attack up the sideline, and a lot of those has transitioned out. And so what you've seen now, teams are playing the 2 high safeties to take away that vertical element, going more towards the power run game. So that maybe creates an element where he can work in that hybrid running back role. I think that there's the other guy too that kind of sticks in my mind with him a little bit is Chase Claypool. And Chase Claypool frustrates everybody because his rookie year, he saw a little bit of that. His sophomore year, he turned into just kind of the vertical player. And if Treylon Burks is that, he's not going to be drafted in the right area.
No, I mean, your point is correct in terms of someone's going to love him in your league, because he's gone at 102 in a couple mocks that I've done, and he's gone at 107. He's kind of around the board. But like I said, and like Christian kind of pointed out, if he goes later, I think he'll slip a little bit. I don't know if he'll go out of the first, but what if Olave goes to the Chiefs, or what if these guys go to these places where they have better landing spots? And then I do think Burks is going to be there. But, to me right now, I think he's my wide receiver 4, if I'm being honest. If I think off the top of my rankings on Football Guys, I'm pretty sure I have him 4. And it's the athletic score. And it's what is his position? And it's what is his landing spot going to be? These things are all built into it. But anything else on this one, guys? No,
I think we've said enough about the book of Treylon Burks.
Treylon Burks, going to be interesting, but like I said, like we always say, I think landing spot is key for all of these dudes. So it is what it is. We can say that that's a cop out. It's not. I mean, in reality, these guys are very close in tiers. So when you're looking at them, it's going to be volume and who's going to get the receptions or the targets. And I think that's kind of where it's going to be at with these guys. So we appreciate you guys tuning in the channel. Please hit that like or subscribe button. Don't forget to check out the Patreon, and we appreciate you guys.